Question 1. We're trying to estimate the occupancy rate for New Zealand motels at the beginning of 2018. So over here somewhere, along this line here. Now you use statistical reasons to justify. So what we're going to do is go, well, the beginning of 2018, I'm sort of guessing it's this sort of peak area here. So I'm just going to draw a little trend line, if you like, along there. That gives me an answer of roughly 67%. Now what I'm trying to do with it, I'm trying to justify it with statistical reasons. So I'm just going to say, well, there is a general trend of the start of the year increasing over the past, probably what, since 2009, so that's past 7 years. Over those past 7 years, it's probably increased by, what, from 64 to 67, 66, 7 years. It's only increased by 3, so it's increasing by 3 over 7% each year. So what the marking schedule wanted, they wanted you to give that answer. There's your achieve tick. But they really wanted you to state with numbers what it was increasing by every year. You had to justify why you were choosing it. Drawing a trend line, yeah, maybe that helped you. Okay, but really saying something about justifying it. Justifying it was your merit tick. Now this question had comment on the trend, the seasonal variation, and any unusual features of these graphs. So there was 3 things that I asked you, not just the one. What is the trend? So, okay, so trend overall. What's happening to the graph? Well, if we think about overall it's sort of not really changing. Because it's sort of going up and down, and really this 65 matches with that 65, so it's not really changing overall, not really changing over the 16 years. But there is a second part to that, like if you can sort of follow, there's a increasing trend there, then there's a drop, and then there's a sort of another increasing trend. So there's sort of 2 trends, if you like. Where it's sort of going 65 to 70 and 2000 to 2008, and then from what's that, 64% in 2009 through to 66 in 2016. So that split trend is something that you could have mentioned as well. It also leads to another point. There's a sudden drop in 2009, isn't there? Or 2008, 2009, somewhere around here. There's a sudden drop. And what drops from roughly from 70% to about 64%. Okay, other things, other common things you were probably able to give would have been the regular repeating pattern, which is highest at beginning of the year, with drops in the middle, possibly due to our climate. Saying something like that. And the last thing that we sort of wanted you to notice, or they wanted you to notice, was the fact that there's a peak here, peak here, peak here. There's another 2 peaks in there. So, I mean, they could almost match up with school holidays. That's what they've said. So smaller peaks matching up with school holidays. So there are 4 things to talk about now. Just a question. It says comment on this. So there's basically your marking schedule says achieve tick is commenting on 1. If you comment on 2 things with justification, so a justification is saying over the 16 years, it's talking about that percent in there, those percentages there. It talks about sudden drop in there from that. You're using the numbers. So if you made 2 of the above, then you got a merit with a justification. And if you managed to make 3, then you got your excellence tick, but again with justification. So much easier to see here in colour the difference between the backpackers and the motels. So the first part here, you are trying to compare the time series for both graphs. So the key word, we've got to do some sort of comparison. So say something and then compare the 2. So things they were looking for was, like, one was a trend. So overall trend, overall the motels are above the backpackers. They sort of, motels is very similar, like you've already mentioned, but the backpackers are declining by about, starts off about 65 and goes to about 49 over the 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, it's roughly 14 years, so it's about 1% per year. Another thing you can see there is the motels, obviously there's that sudden drop. Not really a sudden drop in the backpackers, so that's a difference. So the sudden drop seen in motels, not evident with the backpackers. So that's 2 things you could mention. Third thing you could mention was, well, another comparison is there are the same regular patterns. Same regular repeating patterns, which is high at the start of the year, lower during the middles. The other thing you could mention there is, well, actually, yeah, that's true, high at the start, low in the middle, but if you look at the motels, there's 1, 2, sort of there's 3 peaks there, as opposed to the middle, sorry, the backpackers, there's sort of only 1 peak. I mean, there's another peak there, but so there's only 2 peaks in the backpackers, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, as opposed to the motels, there's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, it's 1, 2, 3. So, so there are extra peaks in motels to
extras, but only one small peak extra for backpackers. And say this could be the winter people looking for snow. Whatever this could be. So again, you got achieve tick was for one statement. You got a merit tick for two statements with numbers to back them up. And your excellence tick was three statements, justification, and numbers. Okay, so here we've got January 2000 and January 2016. We are asked to study the two pie graphs, and then what do you see? What do you predict for 2018? Alright, so well, in 2000, all three, they're almost thirds, aren't they? Pretty close. And backpackers are about the same, so they've stayed the same. That's decreased, and that has increased. So from there to there has been an increase in hotels from 2000 to 2016. Backpackers stayed the same, and motels decreased over this time. We would expect a similar pattern to occur. So what we would expect to see is backpackers stay the same, We'd expect hotels to grow slightly, and we'd expect to see the motels decrease slightly. So that there was a merit question. If you got both of those things, if you did the motels and these two, if you did one, so just one of the above, can't spell above, one of the above, you got your U tick. Count up how many U ticks you got. If you got one U tick, that got you an N2. If you get one R tick and only one R tick, then you get an M5. If you get three U ticks, you get an A4. That's how the marking schedule will work. So now they are expecting you to be concrete experts. It's a bit rough, but anyway. So what you're asked to do is describe the relationship. So really, as the number of days go on, the strength increases. As the days since concrete was poured, the strength increases. That's your basic achieved tick for that one. Now, if you had said something on the lines of, well, what it does, it increases and then sort of plateaus out. So increases rapidly over the first few days, but then plateaus out, or something in context, the strength increases rapidly over the first few days and then plateaus out, that there was a merit statement. If you had then given it in some sort of numbers, well, increases by, let's go with nice round figures, so to 24,000 in 10 days by 2,400 kilopascals per day. That was your excellence tick there. Second one, when estimate number of days, well, what they wanted you to discuss was when does it start to plateau out, and so that's up to your interpretation though. So I've drawn one there in blue saying plateaus out around about day 9. You could have said it plateaus out sort of in here. You could have said it plateaus out over here. So really for that answer we wanted roughly 10 days. That's what the marking schedule says. So 10 days got you an achieve tick. But really if you had said any day with the reason why you chose that, so in other words you justified that with the graph. Now justification with the graph could be, it starts to plateau out. That is your merit tick. Okay, so really you could have got anything as long as you justified why. Okay, so here we are comparing the distributions for concrete A and concrete B. Now a lower day is better because it takes less days for the concrete to be hard. Okay, so what are some of the things we could talk about? We could talk about the middle 50%. Remember, that is the interquartile range. That's this range here. Recipe A has a smaller interquartile range 2 than recipe B, which is 3, meaning recipe A is more consistent. Other things we could think about were the range, the overall range for recipe A is smaller than recipe B. Recipe A was, what's that, 7 to 13, 6, as opposed to recipe B being 6 to 15, it's 9. And that tells you that there is more variation. In recipe B. It's something that you don't really want if you are trying to talk about concrete, making concrete harder. Other things we can talk about is sort of the shift of the data. So from 50% of recipe B, here's 50% of their concrete, or sorry, of its concrete. I suppose it's not its concrete. Its concrete takes longer to get hard, than 75% of recipe A. This suggests that recipe B takes longer for the concrete to meet optimum strength. A couple of other things we could mention. We could mention the modes here and here. We could mention the modes for recipe A is much higher. Well, is 9. There are much more at 9 and 8 as opposed to recipe B, which there are sort of 2 modes at 8 and 11. So quite a big difference there. And the last thing you could potentially mention was the fact there are some clusters. There's a cluster here, as opposed to clusters are sort of more spread out. There's no real big. There's a cluster and there's a mini cluster, but there most of the data is there for the other one. So how this question was marked again. So if you had one feature, one of the above 5, that got you an achieve tick. If you had 2 features with some sort of justification, with some sort of numbers to back you up, there's your merit tick. And if you had 3 with evidence, 3 with evidence, with justifications, with everything else, there is your excellence tick. Here all we're after is which would you recommend, and you have to justify that. So you could choose either or, but you need to be able to justify why. Most people, if they were able to justify why, would actually justify recipe A. A few reasons. The recipe A is more consistent. Now what does more consistent mean? Well, it means that how is it more consistent basically is the interquartile range for recipe A is 2 compared to recipe B, which is 3, but also the range. Recipe A's range is 6 compared to 9 of recipe B. So it's almost the same as the last one, but so they're more consistent because of the range. They are more reliable because they are closer together. And if you are working on some sort of building site, you need that predictability that these 2 clusters bring to you. More reliable. Here so the reliability part is talking about, well, there's more here in this cluster. This is actually really spread out, very symmetrical distribution. That's what you really needed. So for an achieved tick there, you just need a 1 of those 3 things there, just 1 of those. Got you an achieved tick. Merit tick, you needed 2 of those. And you needed to basically say not just reliable, but you need to say why they're reliable. And again, count up how many U ticks you got. If you get 1 U tick, that gives you an M2. If you get 3 U ticks, you get an A4. 2 R ticks, you get an M6. So there is one of 3 types of accommodation used. So hotels, motels, and backpackers. 25% are in hotels. So hotels is 25%. 53% in motels. Plus the backpackers percent is your 100%. So your backpackers percent is just 100% minus 53% minus 25%, which is just 22%. Your answer could be as a decimal as well, and that there was an achieve tick. Alright, to answer this question we need to fill out the tree diagram first. So from the previous question there were 22% in backpackers. From up here all 3
30% stay only one night, so there's going to be 30%, and there's going to be 30% there. Now I'm just writing 30%, the same as 0.30 because it's easier later on. 58 for hotels, 2 to 3 nights, so 58%, 0.58. 0.42 for motels and 0.36 for backpackers. Now remember, all the branches that come from the one spot have to add to 1, so 0.3, 0.58 and 0.12 add to 1. 0.3, 0.42 and 0.28 add to 1, and 0.34 down the bottom. Now if this is stay 1 night, stay 2 or 3, this is more than 3, more than 3, and more than 3. So now we get to our question. So what is the probability that a traveller spent more than 3 nights in a hotel? So here's hotel, here's more than 3 nights. So that happens just here. To get there we have to multiply along our branches. That is 0.25 times 0.12, and that gives you an answer of 0.03. That there with the working is your merit tick. You could get an achieved tick with just your correct answer only, but to get your correct answer you should learn the working, so just write the working down. Next part, what is the probability that a traveller stayed more than 3 nights? Well, that happens here, here, and here. To get this answer, it's above, but we had to multiply along the branches. To get this one, we have to multiply along the branches. To get that one, we have to multiply along the branches. So all we're going to do is we're going to add 0.25 times 0.12. We're going to add 0.53 times 0.28, and we're going to add 0.22 times 0.34. So those three answers are 0.03, 0.1484, and 0.0748. Add all those up, and you get an answer of 0.2532. Now, that answer there gave you an excellence tick, but you had to have shown some working either through here or on your table, so on your tree. If you had any two of these answers, that was your merit tick, and if you had one of those answers, just one of these ones, that was your achieved tick. Okay, so what's the probability that a traveller who stayed more than 3 nights stayed in a hotel? So what we need is, we basically need the probability that they stayed more than 3 nights in hotel, and divided by the probability that they stayed more than 3 nights. So that is just 0.03 divided by 0.2532, our answer from part 1, our answer from part 2. That there gives you an answer of 0.11848, so it's something around there. So that there was your merit tick, and having that as your working gave you an achieved tick. Now to answer the second part, so part C, we're almost looking at a whole new tree diagram. We're only interested in they stayed in a hotel and 4 nights or more, or that they didn't. That they stayed in a hotel 4 nights or more, and they didn't. Hotel 4 nights or more, or they didn't. And so the questions are saying, what's the probability that at least one of them stayed in a hotel and so that answer is true, that answer there is true, that answer there is true as well. So in other words, remember all 4 of these answers will add to 1. So we can just go 1 minus this answer down here. Now that answer down there is, well, what's the probability they did not stay in a hotel for more than 4 nights? Well, that's just 0.97, isn't it? Remember our answer from the first part was 0.03, so that's 0.97 as well. So we get 1 minus 0.97 squared. That should give you an answer of 0.0591. That there gives you an excellence tick. It gives you an excellence tick. You can also get achieved ticks as well from sort of drawing this almost correct. Or if you had written down somewhere that part there, you got an achieved tick as well. If you've done this correctly and identified these or identified those, that's where you got your merit tick from. But quite a hard question when you didn't have an idea about trying to draw a new tree diagram. That was what you were really trying to do.